Hello, everyone. This is Trudy DeWitt with Calix. I'll give about 30 seconds to a minute, and then we'll get started. Looks like we have a good group joining us here. Just giving everybody a chance to hop on. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Bad actors are hijacking networks. Fight back with security by design. And before our presenters begin, I want to share a few quick tips so that you can get the most out of your webinar experience today. Located at the top toolbar and on the right-hand side, you'll see your settings and control panel, and you'll find the questions section. In the questions section, indicated in the box with the question mark on the toolbar, we encourage you to submit any questions or comments you have during the presentation. You can type them in there. We'll address those during the Q&A session at the end. And bear in mind, if we don't get to yours, we'll send you a written response with email. Finally, there's going to be 2 live poll questions for you to take part in throughout the webinar. And we'd like to thank you in advance for your participation in those, because it will really enrich our conversation today, and then also how we take this topic further within Calix and meet our client requirements. And just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded. We will post the link in the coming days on the Calix Webinar Hub, and also be on the lookout for an email from the demand generation team, where you will find the link for your convenience. So now with that, it's time to turn it over to our host, John Casadonte, Calix Senior Product Marketing Manager. John, the mic is all yours.
Great, thank you, Trudy. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. We appreciate your time today, and we hope that you guys have had a great year to date. Can't believe it's already the end of February, and we're really happy that you joined us this afternoon. So I wanted to first introduce our presenters for today. So as Trudy introduced myself, I look after the product marketing for the unlimited subscriber portfolio. You might have heard me on some webinars in the past and/or some of the release conversations that have ensued. But I have 2 pretty special guests here that will be joining me and conveying a lot of really good information. The first to introduce is Jessica McAvoy. She is the Assistant Vice President for Cloud and Product Security. It's a pretty significant role within her responsibility and purview. She'll bring a lot to the table here, and hopefully we can engage with you in conversations. Second is Bennett Kokoro. Bennett is our product line leader for cybersecurity in the unlimited subscriber portfolio. So you could say that I rely on Bennett in my world to understand how we're approaching security within our products and our systems and applications. So again, as far as Bennett is concerned, he'll be able to bring you the topics of anything to do on the subscriber side, and we hope to engage you with some really good detail at that level. So the next thing I wanted just to reinforce what Trudy had said earlier. So please be sure to use the Q&A box so that we can identify the questions coming from the field. If you have comments, please feel free to put them in the chat window, and make sure you address it to all of us and maybe to all the peers that are on the call. That way we can all be involved in the conversation and respond back to you. So today we have several topics to cover in the agenda. So we're going to start off with a short conversation around security and the BSP, and we'll talk a little bit about what how the industry perceives security and how things are going within our industry and how we're addressing it. Secondly, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, who's going to carry us through some shared responsibility discussion, as well as security by design, a concept that you're going to hear more about more and more from Calix throughout this presentation and probably throughout the rest of the year. She'll turn it over to Bennett. Bennett's going to talk about defense in depth. Defense in depth is something the industry has defined, and that we are going to educate you on what that means and how you can be involved in participating in defense in depth. And then hopefully we'll close this out with a decent Q&A, getting your questions on the table and recorded, and we'll move on from there. So there will be 2 poll questions that I'd like to push out to you today. The first poll question is very basic, very logical, I think, in terms of the topic today. So just thinking about over the past 12 months, what have you experienced as a BSP? Whether you have been involved in it specifically, that you've had an actual incident, but you had no reaction or no required action in order to correct it, or maybe you had a serious impact and you needed to do something about it in order to either secure your business or protect your subscribers. Third option would be is that you haven't had any security incident that you're aware of. Or that you're not having an experience and that you're just not aware of any indication there. So one of these 4 will be a selection that we'd like to see, and I'm going to ask Trudy to give you a few more seconds, then push out the results just to get an idea of where you're standing on this particular topic. Just wanted to add to everybody is that, security has been a dialogue that we've had in our industry for a great deal of time. Things do evolve, and it's important to indicate, like what exactly how we're accomplishing taking care of the particular issue. So Trudy, can you push the results? And if not, I can move forward. So we'll circle back with that, you guys, so you know. Okay, I'm gonna press on. So looking at let's look at the state of affairs within the industry. So as a subscriber, and I apologize, keeps bouncing off of my presentation. So let's look at the two different angles to this conversation. So all of us have subscribers. Each of us are our own subscribers to a certain extent, whether it be to your own BSP or somebody else's BSP. And in this particular area, breaking it down into the 2 most impacted areas, the business world and also the residential world. So a couple statistics here that are easily to reflect, and these are captured from industry analysts that have covered this topic. So year over year, we expect a growth. We always see a growth, and we expect a growth in the number of increased cyber crimes for SMBs. So SMBs are particularly vulnerable. Their environments are open generally to the public. Think about businesses like a restaurant, a bar. It could be in a gym somewhere, but any of these locations that have open access provided to their constituents basically are vulnerable to bringing in some kind of cybersecurity threat into the network. So generally that's the entry point, as most of us know, is either through a device or through a human that brings those kind of challenges to the table. The other area that to look at, and by the way, nearly 43% of the cyber attacks, as shown in the box, are targeted at SMBs. So nearly half of what we see coming in are coming through the SMBs. The other category, of course, is our residential users, everybody like ourselves. And the fact of the matter is, for us as subscribers, is that it's not just our typical Wi-Fi access for our own means, whether we're surfing the internet or whether we're doing work at home applications, whatever the case might be, streaming. There's many other ways of getting into a provider's network now that you know that the proliferation of smart devices. So even though the statistic of 62% of us is generated from a 2023 report, those numbers haven't been finalized for 2024, but there is a significant increase year over year on the number of attached devices that we have within our homes to our internet. And every day we buy a new piece of technology, it's likely they'll have a Wi-Fi interface, likely have its own app for control. So just keep in mind that we are increasingly creating a situation where we have to stay on top of security from all angles. And in that last mention, that 57% of us are equipped with smart devices. I bet that number is much higher. That is a recent number, but I just imagine the polling of whoever they did probably represented A vast majority of maybe older people, that are the next generation of individuals are solely based on smart devices. That's how they base their homes, their interconnection, the way they communicate. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. Now let's take it from the broadband service provider angle. So how does this affect you as a BSP? Well, some interesting information has come out. There is enough data here from just simple Google searches that will take you into a world of being concerned that this is a constant threat that occurs day in, day out. Last year, there was a report just for the Salt Typhoon cybersecurity threat that originated from Asia, that specifically there were 9 US BSPs that were impacted by it. Now, those BSPs had problems that resulted into outages. They had problems that were due to denial of service in some some connections going to business operators or to businesses, from their operators network. Critical services were affected. So it goes on and on. And to put a monetary value on that is probably impossible to know, right? Unless you really sit down and talk to each one of your customers on how they might have been impacted by those particular problems. The other thing that has occurred, even just from the beginning of this year, right? We're 2 months into 2025, and there have already been 2 significant reports of cybersecurity threats that have affected a BSP. So may seem like a small number to you, 9 and 2. That's not reflective of the damage that, how many of them have actually caused some type of damage, whether it be minor or major. These are significant ones. So 11 total just in the 14 months from 2024 to where we are in 2025. Why these should concern you is largely about how people trust your environment, trust your network, trust your services. So your reputation is on the line a lot of times, and you're probably most aware of the fact that your reputation is going to be driven by what's mentioned by either peers, by individuals that are using your services from place to place. But there's no better way to expose a particular service provider than to be caught up in a breach that is heavily reported by the industry. So with all that said, I wanted to turn it over to Jessica and have Jessica walk us through some information that's going to be really relevant to your day-to-day operations. So with that, I'll pass it on to you, Jessica.
Thanks, John. So I know that security has been in the news, and I know that more than a few of you have reached out to speak with me or someone from my team about how we are protecting you from these threats at Calix. It seems like every time we turn around, we're hearing about new compromises, either affecting our broadband service providers directly, like Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon that John was mentioning, or that are affecting your resources on the subscriber end, such as last year when the Department of Justice took down quite a few misinformation botnets that were all running on compromised consumer gateways. So what I'm going to speak with you about today is a little bit about what we're doing here at Calix to protect you from these types of attacks and this type of theft of your resource. So rather than focusing on security in the context of your subscribers' homes and businesses and ensuring that they remain safe, we're actually looking at how do we protect you and your resources as well with the security of our devices. Now at Calix, we start with our secure by design principles. Our number one principle is that security is everyone's responsibility. Now, this isn't one of those cases where it's everyone's responsibility that no one's taking care of. We actually have a large number of checkpoints and milestones throughout our development lifecycle where everybody that is involved in the creation of our products and the care and feeding of our products once they're deployed has responsibilities to ensuring the security of that product. We also believe that the secure path should be the default. Now, this is not necessarily the case in all areas of our product. We are constantly evolving and continuing to grow into better alignment with these principles. But you'll notice that as we roll out new security features, especially over the last several months when we've rolled out new security features in our cloud environment, you'll notice that those options are selected for you already. You shouldn't have to opt in to a more secure experience. So we believe that the secure path should be the default. We also believe to assume compromise, assume the worst so that we can plan for the best. We assume that every outside system is malicious, and we expect that you assume the same about us. Just as we know that the internet is a very scary place and there's a lot of bad people out there, we assume that every connection to our cloud or to our devices could be malicious, and so we protect ourselves accordingly. And we anticipate that you have built your network in the same way, where you're only allowing the explicit traffic that is appropriate for your environment. We believe that product security covers the entire product. That doesn't just mean the code that we wrote or the hardware that we created. It means that we review all uses of third-party components, including those open source libraries and our development environments as well. We ensure that we're building our products in a secure environment and that our supply chain for our software is also kept secure. And then finally, our principle of continuous testing, continuous response. We are continuously monitoring, assessing, and improving the security of our products throughout their life cycle. And we're about to talk about that development life cycle and those milestones where we do have the opportunity to evaluate our security. Likewise, we do this when we're responding to either actual incidents or our tabletops of simulated incidents that we go through every year. These give us an opportunity to find the holes that have slipped through the cracks, and that is part of our continuous improvement and continuous response principle. So John, if you want to go to our Secure by Design implementation. So as we build our products, we use what is known as a systems development lifecycle or a software development lifecycle. That lifecycle is standard across pretty much any vendor that creates products. There's a requirements phase where we determine what we're going to build. There's the architecture and design phase where we determine how we're going to build it. Then there's the actual coding and building where we'll prototype our hardware and we'll actually write the software that runs on it. There's a testing phase, there's a release, and there's a support. Now, this is not a linear process as it appears here. It's a continuous process. Once our products are out in the wild, we continue to go through this process for every new feature, every enhancement, or every bug fix when we do discover bugs or security vulnerabilities. So aligned to that workflow, my team has a number of milestones that we do to ensure that security is baked into this process from the beginning. For example, during the requirements phase, we are going to provide the security requirements to the team. So not only do you want to build this new feature that has these functional requirements, it's also going to have these security requirements. It's not good enough to just have a web UI feature that allows a customer to do a functionality. That feature has to be secure. We have to ensure that the endpoints are appropriately sanitizing their data and that there's the appropriate security controls put in place both at the network, system, and data layers. Then we go into the actual building of the product, that design phase. During the architecture and design phase, we do what's known as threat modeling. Threat modeling is basically making a map of everything that could possibly be attacked in a feature or product. So rather than taking a practical look and trying to guess at what could be attacked based on known exploits today, we're actually looking at it from a completely theoretical perspective and mapping out that entire attack surface and where could there be a weakness that's exploited, even if it's a weakness that is not known to the industry today. So this is how we prevent those zero-day vulnerabilities, by looking at this in a very holistic approach. And we use what's known as the STRIDE methodology. This is a methodology that was created by Microsoft that allows us to enumerate all of the possible threats on each possible attack surface. So this is where we look at, could this present a threat of spoofing? Could it present a threat of tampering? And so on and so forth throughout all of this STRIDE pillars. We also review those designs once they've been implemented, and we review the test plans as well. During the coding and building phase, we continue to review the milestones, the documentation that engineering is presenting, and this is where we start doing our security testing. So all of our developers have plugins in their IDE, in their development environment, that tell them when they are using a vulnerable component or when they are writing code that is not written in a secure way. It will flag these issues up to them right away so that there's no lost time and they're able to correct that error as they go. We also have a very robust testing phase after the code is written. Once it's written, we have a number of assessments that run on it. We do static code analysis, of course. We do dynamic application security testing on our web applications and our APIs. We have protocol analysis on our network protocols, and a large amount of testing that goes into our third-party development libraries as well. And then finally, the big day comes. We have our quarterly cadence release. Right before that moment, we do a final round of pre-deployment testing, where we're doing end-to-end penetration testing, making sure that all of the pieces are still fitting together securely and in a functional way. And then we move into that final phase, that support phase, where we're doing ongoing security testing and monitoring. We are constantly looking at our products. Is there a vulnerability that has come out in our third-party software that wasn't there when we wrote the product or the feature? Is there an incident that's occurring either in our cloud environment or on our customers' hardware? Depending on how long you've been with Calix, you may have experienced an incident or two with us. There was an issue last year in the EWI that did allow for malicious access to some of the GigaSpire devices in a very narrow set of circumstances when customers had enabled the remote management capabilities. And this is something that we give you as a tool to administer those devices. But of course, it does present a risk because it is opening up a web interface on that device. We learn from all of these incidents and all of these issues just as much as we learn from our threat modeling at the beginning of the workflow. So using that as an example and going through this workflow, we took that incident, we understood the underlying threat that caused that particular incident, and of course, we immediately remedied those vulnerabilities that existed in EWI itself. But that's not good enough to prevent issues like that in the future. So we also looked at how can we continue to make this product more resilient, knowing that this web interface is going to be a continuous source of risk. It's a continuous threat. It's a very large threat surface in that threat model. And so we take that back into the life cycle and we look at it from this perspective of, how do we make sure that only our customers are allowed to interact with that service? So we've implemented the ability to set an ACL so that network traffic on the GigaSpire will be restricted to just you as a customer and just your technicians. We also have looked at further hardening EWI or even potentially migrating away from that service that runs on the GigaSpire and moving towards more of a web-based management. We're continuously going to be improving upon those services. So it doesn't end at the moment that we release that patch for those specific vulnerabilities. We're always going one step ahead to make sure that we're preventing any potential attack against that interface as a whole moving forward. So to implement this, we have a number of program elements that is all part of my team and my program. The architecture and design, I have security architects that are doing this threat modeling, this design review, and actually building the security controls into our products. We have attack surface management that is run by our security operations team. That's where they're doing all of this scanning, all of the manual testing, and really just looking at what vulnerabilities exist that could be realized out of those more theoretical threats that were identified. Incident response, of course, as we discussed, that's a very big part of our learning opportunities. And under incident response, we also do a number of scheduled tabletop exercises throughout the year. We don't want to have a real world incident. It's a great learning opportunity, but we would prefer to have that in a more controlled environment. So throughout the year, we also engage in crafted incidents that we come up with scenarios, and we try and make these more and more challenging each year to really poke at those areas that we think we might be weak in and go through that what if someone found a new vulnerability in this particular attack surface, how would we detect that? How would we know about it? How would we notify our customers? How would we resolve it? And then we put all of those learnings into play. And then finally, we have our security champions. My team is not nearly large enough for the entire organization, as is any security team, I'm sure. So what we have is a federated model where we create security expertise within each of our engineering teams. So within every single team that's doing product development, we have folks that are joining our monthly forums, that are part of our weekly touch points, that are responsible for ensuring that security controls and security requirements are being implemented. And these people can be champions for security. They're very familiar with everything that their team is working on, and they can raise these issues to us if they think that it might be security impacting, and I need to get my architect's eyes on it. So John, if you want to continue. So we talked a lot about what we at Calix are doing to make sure that our products are secure. But our products don't operate in a vacuum. When you deploy our Access Edge products, for example, those products inside your network are not presenting a substantial threat, but you still have to build a secure network around them, right? Our Access Edge is not going to provide perimeter controls for you. If you are using our Axos devices with SMX to manage them, just as an example, our product documentation suggests that you have at least one firewall around those. A lot of customers have multiple firewalls where this runs in a DMZ that's specifically for their service delivery network. So there's a shared responsibility model that we all participate in. So in this shared responsibility model, you have us, Calix, ensuring that the products that we deliver to you have the functionality and the capabilities to operate in a secure manner, and that should be the default. Our vendors and your vendors alike participate in this shared responsibility model. If you have a vendor that is managing your services, you have to entrust them with your credentials, so they become part of that shared responsibility model. They now take on that liability for the protection and operation of what happens with those credentials that you gave them. Same thing happens with our partners. We ensure that they are vetted and that they provide a secure environment, but they take on the responsibility of safeguarding their part that they are playing with both of us. And finally, your subscribers. Your subscribers have a role in the shared responsibility model. We prefer that they not buy some of these really vulnerable devices. You're hearing a lot about home security cameras, especially pet cameras that are developed with backdoors in them, or maybe they're using their own gateway instead of the one that you've provided to them, and they choose to use one that is not secure, that's a big risk to you because it can result in a theft of your resources if it's taken over to join one of these botnets or in any other scenario. And then finally, you of course have a big piece of this as well, ensuring that your network is secured, that your systems remain up to date. And Bennett is going to talk a little bit more about the concept of defense in depth, where you can do your part to keep your network secure.
Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate it. A lot of great information there. Yeah, so Jessica gave us a really good overview of secure by design as it pertains to Calix and in general, and then she also outlined the shared responsibility model. And now we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about defense in depth. So at the highest level, a defense in depth strategy basically uses multiple security measures to protect your organization's assets, and in your case, the broadband service providers' assets. And the easiest way to think about defense in depth is to use an example that I like in sort of the more physical world, right? If you think about an experience that we've all had, which is going into the office, right? There's multiple checkpoints along the way there. You pull into the parking lot, you walk into the lobby, there's a security guard, there might be some security cameras monitoring the activity there. You have to maybe scan in, or someone has to check you in. You then get in the elevator, you get up to the office. You're not just immediately let into the office. Typically, you have to scan in again to another door to get into the physical office. All the while, we have systems sort of monitoring the activity on each individual floor. And then you finally get to your desk, and you're not even immediately given access to your work assets. You have to put in the correct credentials to gain access to the company's network. So when we talk about defense in depth, we're talking about multiple security measures along the stack that'll allow someone to ensure the highest degree of security possible. And how this relates specifically is, hardening your secure VPNs, VPN gateways, implementing strict default deny ACL strategies, employing strong network segmentation, and monitoring for updates to third-party components, end-of-life hardware device for hardware, or out-of-date monitoring, out-of-date hardware, operating system versions, and software and upgrades as soon as possible. If you go to the next slide, John. So defense in depth in sort of our context, right? What are the different elements? Well, there's physical controls, as I just kind of highlighted. There's the network security controls. This is software that authenticates maybe an employee or a subscriber when they enter the network. There's the administrative controls. This authorizes sort of employees or subscribers once they've authenticated. There's endpoint controls, so you can think of this as sort of network detection and response, right? Traditionally, this would take the form of an antivirus tool, but these sorts of tools have sort of evolved as the industry and the world's gotten more complex. And then finally, there's behavioral analysis. This is using advanced algorithms or machine learning to detect anomalies in behavior, subscriber traffic behavior, or in the applications and devices themselves, right? Why is this, why is this Google Nest querying the web 1,000 times per minute? That's odd, right? So taking different types of strategies and different elements of security to secure the entire picture. And what does that mean in the context of Calix, right? So what do we do in terms of these various things that you see on the left, right? Well, one of them is Protect IQ. Protect IQ is sort of about securing the subscriber traffic, right? Making sure that subscribers aren't putting themselves at risk or putting your network at risk as a result. And then there's tools like Calix Cloud, Operations Cloud, Service Cloud, maybe monitoring that network traffic and making sure for outages and any sorts of alarms that could arise. And then finally, we have our hardware, or our GigaSpires, Gigasystems. And these are sort of the engines that make these things work, right? The tools that we kind of secure by design, as Jessica was referencing. And if you can go to the next slide, John. I think that's it for my content.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Bennett. Thanks, Jessica. So just wanted to give you guys a quick view on what else that you might be seeking for information. So if you're not aware, within my Calix and the Calix University, there are either e-learning or instructor-led sessions that you can take advantage of to get a little bit more insight and activity around. The other option, of course, is to engage with your success account manager. So for those of you that have been in touch with them, this is a topic that's certainly fair game that if you bring up, we'll search out the right individuals to make sure we have this discussion with those individuals in your organization. And then lastly, if you do have questions around the unlimited subscriber side of things, your sales engineer who covers unlimited subscriber products has the ability to go in depth on some of the security applications and concerns that might come up during deployment and utilization of those products in the field. So again, please make sure you exercise your opportunities. These are educational options for you that are provided by Calix on an as-needed basis. So next, I'd just like to see if we could wrap up and start, before we do a Q&A here, is to wrap up with a final poll question. And, you know, based on what you've heard today, perhaps you've already had some knowledge of it. If there is an interest in getting a little bit more information on infrastructure and subscriber side cyber threats, let us know. If you want to engage with Calix on any kind of shared responsibility and the BSP role in the shared responsibility, we can certainly hook you up with the right individuals to go in depth in that area. We talked about, and Bennett talked about, Protect IQ. Maybe there's a need to have a dialogue about Protect IQ, about Experience IQ, and how those can be utilized, as well as Command IQ, how those all can be utilized to help implement some form of security for your subscribers. And then the last item is, if you need to have a conversation directly with us about the solutions, you have access to your sales account managers. They certainly can manage and direct the conversation to the right individuals within the organization. So with that, I wanted to start out with doing a little bit on our Q&A. So there have been a couple questions that originated that I'm going to start with, and I'm going to ask also Bennett and Jessica, after I get through some of these, to maybe enlighten me on whether you're receiving any Q&A questions as well. A first question that came up during the conversation earlier was how Calix is staying on top of newly developed security threats. So obviously we're hearing more and more about new security threats. So how do we go about that? And I'll address that to both you, Jessica, and to Bennett.
Yeah, do you want me to take this one first, Jessica, or?
Yeah,
you
can speak from your side, and I'll
Sure.
add.
Yeah, so on the subscriber side, John, we're constantly taking in new updates to our threat intelligence feeds. We're updating things like malicious URLs that we're looking for, malicious files that bad actors might be using to try to gain access to a subscriber device or subscriber network. We have an intrusion prevention system as well, and we're constantly taking updates twice weekly to those signatures so that we are making sure we are up to date with all the known threats that are out there today.
And then from a products perspective, we are also looking at our threat intelligence, understanding the types of threats that are impacting the industry, new vulnerabilities that are coming out in the components of our cloud platform or those open source components in our hardware products, and making sure that any new vulnerabilities that come out within those products that do affect our product are being remediated. As I mentioned previously, we're constantly learning from the traffic and the activity that we're seeing against our products. Even if those attempts are not successful, we look to see what are attackers trying to hit. We use, honeypot and canary token type technologies to determine what are attackers looking for in our environment and in our products, so that we can continuously adapt our controls for the latest and greatest threats.
That's great. Okay, thanks for both that. And actually, a good follow-up here, Bennett, for you is considering the subscriber side being the most vulnerable. How do we? The question is, how does Calix envision taking care of that? And I guess as we go forward.
Yes, so there's multiple components to subscriber security, right? It's a little bit more of the Wild West, as you might say, because the subscriber is ultimately going to go out and they're going to go into the real world, and they're going to connect to the internet from all sorts of places that might not have the same security controls that we do. That's one part of it. The other part of it is that a subscriber might be choosing IoT devices that are inherently insecure, right? They might offer some sort of backdoor or something that is totally out of our control. So there are certain things that we can do to make sure the subscriber is secured within the home, and that's like analyzing the subscriber traffic and making sure that they're not going out to any malicious websites, downloading malicious content, and then also using our IPS solution, which has the ability to block traffic bidirectionally, so that if they are using some janky IoT device that is hacked and it starts, it becomes being used as a botnet, we have the ability to block that traffic. We can detect it via our IPS system, and if it matches one of the signature patterns, we can drop that traffic. So we are doing all sorts of things to try to protect the subscriber, let's say, from themselves and as a result, the BSP. And then there's more surface level things too, like trying to secure subscriber data. And you can see that in how we are coming to market with our identity monitoring type solutions. And making sure the subscriber has an understanding of what's actually out there already on them that has been taken advantage of by hackers.
Thanks for that, Bennett. That's good feedback. And so, Jessica, one for you. Question related to the network and what should BSPs be primarily concerned about preventing being exposed?
So very similar to how we protect our cloud environment from attacks, I think BSPs should be implementing similar controls in their environment, such as threat intelligence, network intrusion and intrusion protection systems, and some sort of a security event and incident management platform that can do heuristic-based detections and correlations. What you're wanting to get out of your tool set, even after you have all of your network isolation and you've got your firewalls in place, as Bennett was mentioning, it's not sufficient to rely on a singular control. So what we're looking to use these days, especially since our attack surface is modified so rapidly, we want to make sure that we're doing more heuristic-based detections. So anything that's anomalous in our network should be flagged as a potential indicator of attack within your security event and incident management platform. So your SIEM would be taking in all of these different data sources from your network devices logging, from your system logging, and from your threat intelligence, and it'll correlate the threats that are out there in the industry to any of these anomalous behaviors and activities that it's seeing. So with modern tool sets, a lot of this is automated, but really what we're looking at is anything that looks unusual, we just assume it's malicious. And in these days with our current attack surface, that's a pretty safe bet. So if you assume that every anomaly is malicious, It could just be an errant device. Maybe someone experienced a very isolated storm, or had a transformer blow up in their yard, or what have you. But in a lot of these cases, a lot of anomalous behavior is a pretty good indicator of attack.
Yeah, and actually, you might have answered this in that response, Jessica, but there's an additional question that came in about what are the signs? Are there any indications that the network is experiencing a cyber attack? And if so, what would that be? What would that look like?
Yeah, that's pretty much the same thing, like as far as what we should be looking for, and what we should be protecting against. Defense in depth is about having layers like an onion. Even if your Calix products have a security vulnerability, when we do find something, we will tell you about it in a security advisory, of course. But your network should be designed in a way that even before you have taken that update, you can still rest assured that you have other controls that are preventing your products and your environment beyond just the inherent security of the device itself. So, of course, applying that update, getting the protection from that enhancement is always going to be a better addition to your security posture. You want to make sure that that you have additional controls. So when you're looking at anomalous behavior, you should be able to catch attacks before they get all the way into your environment, simply by recognizing the signs and treating everything as if it's malicious.
That's great. Okay, so I think I'm seeing one more here, and actually open to either you, Jessica, or to Bennett, is who's involved in the industry standard, the defense and defense in depth, and how is Calix contributing to that particular activity in the industry?
So defense in depth isn't really an initiative or an activity. There's not any group of people that came up with this. This has evolved as a philosophy in the industry. Back in the early days of the internet, in the 1900s, we used to joke about network security being kind of like Skittles, hard and crunchy on the outside, soft and squishy in the middle. And unfortunately, there are still a large number of organizations that still have that type of environment. If I had $1 for every time someone told me, it's okay, it's behind our firewall, we would not be having this conversation, because I would be living on my private island in the middle of the Caribbean. It's a very common philosophy, and unfortunately a very outdated one, to have that single layer of security controls. So over time, this concept, this philosophy, has evolved into defense in depth. And this is actually a term that was borrowed from the military. It's similar to how you form your battle strategies, how you form your defensive strategies, is defense in depth. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. And so the same thing has been applied to cyber warfare. We have to adopt a defense in depth strategy, this defense in depth philosophy, to ensure that we're not dependent on any one singular control. Some other philosophies that are more modern even, one of the buzzwords that you might have heard, or catchphrases, is zero trust. Zero trust networking is actually one step further than defense in depth. Defense in depth says, no, I can't have one single security control that's a single point of failure. Zero trust says no component, no network, no entity should ever be considered trusted. If I just assume that everyone communicating with me is already malicious and compromised, even if they're within my own environment, so when I'm designing my network, I'm not going to stop at just having security controls at every layer. I'm going to ensure that that security control is locked down just as much as it would be if this was exposed to the internet. So at every step of the way, you're assuming that the entity on the other end of the line cannot be trusted. And so defense in depth and zero trust really go hand in hand as philosophies on how we build and design our environments so that we can ensure that even if there is a vulnerability, even if we expose a service, erroneously, no one singular mistake can result in the compromise of your network.
Yeah, and Jessica, you beat me to it. I was just about to say zero trust is sort of the next evolution or the next component of defense than in depth, right? Just because it's behind a firewall doesn't mean it's a secure environment. Trust no one, verify continuously. And that is sort of the next step for Calix security products, which is how can we start to support zero trust philosophies and how do we expose that for our customers to take advantage of?
It's great feedback, you two. And I'm just going to ask, I don't know if I missed anything from the Q&A section, Jessica or Bennett. I can't see any others. Anything that you can say? If not, we'll wrap this up.
I don't see anything. I don't know if Trudy can see, but
It's all good. Okay, well,
I think we're
so
all
we're
set.
going to wrap. Everyone, sorry, Trudy.
Yeah, I think we're all set. Yeah, I checked for the questions. There's no questions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So we're going to wrap this now. We certainly appreciate your attention. We hope you have a great day. And as Trudy mentioned, we'll be able to get this recording out to you shortly. And have a great rest of the week and a good weekend.
Thanks,
excellent.
everyone.